Africa is a mineral-rich continent, and its mining and metals continue to attract investment and drive economic growth. Ghana was named as the largest gold producer in Africa in 2019, and predictions are that gold production will exceed this peak. South Africa is a key contributor to the mining sector on the continent and has proved to be resilient in the face of the COVID pandemic. Total revenue generated by the sector for the year ending June 30, 2020 grew by 4%, with a 35% revenue growth in gold mining. Africa also has considerable oil and gas resources that can help accelerate growth on the continent if used strategically. India recently sourced about 16% of its $125 billion worth of oil imports from African nations, and the government was keen to step up its oil diplomacy and increase the share to between 20 and 25% in the short term.
Now, first up, we have an opening keynote address by the Indian Union Minister of Steel, Petroleum and Natural Gas. Join me to welcome the Honourable Dharmendra Pradhan.
Keynote address by Shri Dharmendra Pradhan, Union Minister for Steel, Petroleum and Natural Gas in India. He is the longest-serving Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas in the history of independent India.
Honorable Ole Milekan Adigebet, Minister of Mines and Steel Development, Nigeria, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me immense pleasure to join you today to deliver the keynote address in this session on resource, mining, oil and gas at the second edition of the India-Africa Virtual Summit. I commend IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry and CNBC Africa for hosting this virtual conclave. This year, because of the COVID pandemic-induced restrictions, we are forced to meet virtually. India-Africa story is one of an age-old friendship, the contours of which have only strengthened with modern instruments and technologies. Most recently, India and Africa came together to combat the COVID-19 pandemic, with Indian vaccines being sent to several African countries. Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen, India and African economies represent two of the world's most dynamic economic growth centers. Many of the world's fastest growing economies are in the African continent. With 54 countries, 1 billion people, a youthful demography and an abundance of resource, Africa will count for a lot and will carry our planet's hopes, aspirations and responsibilities. Under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister of India, Sri Narendra Modi, our political engagement has intensified with African countries like never before. India's partnership with Africa is based on a model of cooperation which is responsive to the needs of African countries. It is demand-driven and free of conditionalities. It is based on our strong historical ties and a sense of deep solidarity. As our Prime Minister has underlined, African priorities are our priorities. Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his address to the Parliament of Uganda in July 2018, had outlined 10 guiding principles for India-Africa engagement. Our government has put those guiding principles into action, and there have been important developments in some of the areas identified as ones of the priority. Energy cooperation is integral to the guiding principle of India-Africa engagement. India has diversified interest and substantial cooperation in energy sector with African countries, be it investment in oil and gas assets, sourcing of oil and gas, as well as export of petroleum products from India. Many important firms from Africa also have established their presence in India. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, from the perspective of energy cooperation between India and Africa, the first and the most obvious is the complementarity of resource endowment and supply-demand dynamics. Africa is estimated to have 7% of the global proven oil reserves, 7.5% of the proven global gas reserves, and about 1.5% of global coal reserves. Over the past 2 decades, the African hydrocarbon sector has been expanding rapidly. The new discoveries have seen oil reserves grow by over 100% and gas reserves grow by over 55%. On the other hand, the Indian economy has been one of the powerful growth stories of the world economy, but heavily depend on the imported energy. As a result, there has been a steady increase in India's imports of crude oil, LNG and other petroleum products from Africa. Currently, Africa's share of India's oil import basket is around 15% during last year. India imported 34 million metric ton crude oil from the African countries, mainly from Nigeria, Angola, Algeria, Egypt and Equatorial Guinea. In addition, Cameroon, Chad, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire have emerged as new crude oil import sources. Similarly, LNG imports from Africa are also gradually increasing, which is welcome development. I am happy that India's LNG imports amounting to 7 million metric ton LNG from Nigeria, Angola and Equatorial Guinea have almost touched close to 30% of overall LNG imports to India. Therefore, we would naturally be seeking commercial partners in Africa to meet growing India's energy needs through imports of the crude oil, LNG and other petroleum and energy products. This makes for a truly win-win proposition as our partners seeks assured markets. As India seeks to further diversify sourcing of crude oil and LNG, Africa has a central role largely due to its proximity and absence of any choke points in the transshipments. Coming to investments, Indian oil and gas public sectors companies have invested over $8 billion in various oil and gas assets in several African countries, including Mozambique, Nigeria, Egypt and Namibia. Indian companies also hold interest in number of key oil and gas assets in Gabon, Senegal and Chad. Also in Egypt, Indian players have operational interest in multiple key assets across the Gulf of Suez. There are structural complementaries of our hydrocarbon sector. Africa is not only geographically well endowed with hydrocarbon resource, it also represents a number of dynamic countries whose own demand for fuel, petroleum products, technologies, job, skill and investments is on the rise. The open avenues to explore for more opportunities for equity investments in the African markets and two-way tie-ups. With our proven expertise in refining, consultancy, training, infrastructural developments, among other things, we are perceived potential for mutual beneficial business tie-ups. I am happy to inform that India has now emerged as the third largest refinery in the world and also a major exporter of refined petroleum products. Africa is now our second largest destination for those products. We see considerable potential to expand this segment of the bilateral hydrocarbon trade. Several Indian companies are providing comprehensive engineering, procurement and construction services to the hydrocarbon sector in Africa. In fact, Engineer India Limited, a public sector company under my ministry, is actively engaged in the project export of Africa. EIL is executing the construction of Africa's largest refinery and petrochemical complex in Nigeria. India will continue to take an active part in growth of African hydrocarbon sector by providing technical and engineering expertise in oil refining, consultancy, training and industrial development. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are all familiar with the fact that millions still have no access to the commercial energy. India is rapidly improving the availability of energy to cover 1.3 billion people, and we are now supplying electricity to all households in the country. Our government is working towards the early realization of the 7th goal under United Nations Sustainable Development Goal to ensure access to the affordable, reliable, sustainable and modern energy for all. We are also working to deliver energy justice to the poorest of the poor. India has also made tremendous strides in the providing clean cooking options to its vast population across the country. Through the Prime Minister's Ujjwala scheme, India has provided capital cost subsidies to poor women to adopt a clean burning cooking fuel or LPG. I'm happy to share that as many as 80 million free cooking gas connections were given to the poor women during the last 3 years under the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala scheme. The coverage of LPG in the country is now reached close to 99.6%, rising from about 55% in 2014. We are adding another 10 million LPG connections in the coming months. India will be too happy to share its experience and technical expertise under the highly successful Ujjwala model of promoting LPG as a clean source of fuel in African countries. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, India has been an ardent advocate for renewable energy, particularly the solar energy in the international arena. We do this both because of the requirement of energy and to tackle the need for a less carbon-intensive energy future. We acknowledge the strong interest of African countries to promote solar energy. This is evident from a number of African countries who have opted for membership of International Solar Alliance, which India spearheaded since 2015. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, the trajectory of growth in both Africa and India has come a long way during the last decade. As the world undergoes a profound shift in its relationship with hydrocarbons, India and Africa will remain crucial in any future realignment. Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his address to African leaders in 2018, said that India's priority is not just Africa, India's priority is Africans, every man, woman and child in Africa. This will be guiding spirit of our engagement in energy sector too. Strong India-Africa relations will go a long way in redefining the international order to more egalitarian lines. We should not expect anything less from this shining example of South-South cooperation. Let me conclude by saying that as Africa marches in its journey towards prosperity and progress, India will remain a trusted partner, working closely with Africa for the economic and social empowerment of its people. India and Africa have scaled heights hand in hand, and we will scale greater heights in the years to come. I thank IMC and CNBC Africa for this excellent initiative and wish successful deliberation during the second Indo-Africa Virtual Summit. Thank you, friends.
And thanks to you, Minister Pradhan. And let's hear more about that South-South collaboration from India, heading over to Nigeria now, where the Minister of Mines and Steel Development from Nigeria, the Honorable Olamilekan Ajegbite, was going to join us for the discussion today, but duty called, and he has been called to a very important meeting. He did, however, he didn't leave us empty-handed. However, he left this message last night. Let's take a listen.
Addressed by Olamilekan Ajegbite, Minister of Mines and Steel Development in Nigeria. He is a seasoned professional with over 35 years' experience in architecture and construction. His tenure has seen the drive to resuscitate Ajokuta Steel Complex and the development of a downstream mineral policy. He is also at the forefront of creating a thriving gold ecosystem in the country.
Thank you. It's good to be with you. And it's a great opportunity to discuss the mining opportunities in Nigeria. Proud to the advent of oil and gas in Nigeria, mining was the mainstay of the economy. And in 1958, when oil was discovered, gradually we lost focus. Since 2007, the government of Nigeria has been trying so much to bring mining back as a mainstay of the economy. In 2015, President Muhammadu Buhari came in, and since then he has put a lot of fund into the mining sector so that it can take its rightful place in the economy. One of the major investments that was done by Nigeria for mining is the National Integrated Mining Exploration Project. We call it NIMEP. This is a $50 million project that we did exploration on 4 major minerals in Nigeria to gather the data that will be presented to the interested investors. This program started in the year 2018, and of course, it's being wrapped up. In a few weeks, the results, the data will be all in, and then we could go to an auction bid. We have done exploration on gold. We have done exploration on iron ore, pegmatites, and we've discovered a lot of new minerals that were not even intended during this exploration project. All this will be taken to the auction very soon. I've had to record this message because I will not be available tomorrow for the panel discussion because I have some other urgent national assignment. And I'll be represented on that panel by my special advisor in the office, in the person of Olu Adedayo, who I'm very sure will do justice to the panel discussion. Nigeria is focusing on mining, and it's the right time to come into the sector in Nigeria. I urge all interested investors, local and international, to come to Nigeria at this time. The time is right to be in Nigeria for mining and mining-related businesses. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks to you, Minister Adegbite. And now from one professional to another, that joins me in the headquarters of the CNBC Africa studios, Mr. Godfrey Mutizwa, who is discussing, surprise, surprise, it seems like one of your favorite subjects nowadays, and that's the opportunity in the mining and resources sector. Absolutely.
It's a story that we've covered since, of course, the first Europeans came to Africa unannounced without authority and began exploring and searching all over the place. And what did they find? They found a lot of minerals, every single one that you can think about. Yeah, and the sector has been in a tough spot for the past 10 years, but it's one of those sectors that have benefited from the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, we have seen metal prices shoot through the roof all over the world, and it has benefited a lot of these mining companies that we talk to about their results. And I suppose the question is, where does that money go, and how do you unlock that money into the economies of both India and Africa? So I'm really looking forward to your discussion, Godfrey. It should be a great discussion, no question about that. It has been a silver lining. I think you and I have spoken a lot about the fact that African countries do not have the fiscal space to be able to deal with the impact of COVID-19. But the mining and the royalties that have come from that have certainly made a difference. It saved us a whole huge amount of tax increases here in South Africa that we potentially could have suffered from had it not been for the boon in the revenue, the increased revenue that the mining sector gave our revenue service. But Godfrey, enough yada yada from me. I'll hand it over to you, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you, Fifi, and thank you for that great moderation. By the way, I discovered that the average age of the African farmer is 60 years. I was shocked by that. We need more young people within that sector. Let's move on now, and as you have heard, you heard from the two ministers, one from Nigeria, one from India. We now move on, and let me introduce to you our two panelists for the next session.
Henk Langenhoven, Chief Economist at Minerals Council, South Africa. Olu Adebayo, Senior Special Advisor to Minister of Mines and Steel Development in Nigeria. The moderator is Godfrey Mutizwa, Chief Editor at CNBC Africa.
Thank you, young lady, and a very warm welcome to all of you who are watching us here on the second day of the Indo-Africa Summit. We are talking about, of course, one of the biggest stories on the African continent. We're talking about an industry that built up South Africa as we know it today. So I thought it pertinent that I'd begin with perhaps just a reminder of the kind of issues and opportunity that we are talking about here. I dug up some stuff, and I found out that 30% of the remaining Earth's minerals are on the African continent. And also that the African continent is home to the largest deposits of precious metals and industrial metals. So the place to be, without question, is here. Need I say more? There was a study that was done in 2014 by Citigroup, and that study, I want to remind you, showed that South Africa, under the ground, has got $2.5 trillion in mineral reserves waiting to be tapped. And if we go to the DRC, well, every single metal that you need for the batteries that are going to shape the next revolution are in there. I thought I'd remind you of what they are. What are they? It's cobalt, it's lithium, and the 3 T's. If you don't know what the 3 T's are, let me educate you. It's tin, it's tungsten, and tantalum. You heard the Minister of Nigeria talking about Nigeria's time now, and what do they have? Again, almost every single metal that you can talk about. Enough talking from me. Let's move on and discuss the issues that need to be dealt with to ensure that we're able to exploit those metals. As we heard in the discussion, well, our panelists for this discussion are Hank as well as Ola. Let me begin with you, Hank, and let's talk about the issues that someone who's sitting in India and is looking at the African continent and is hearing this stats and is thinking, I should be headed there. From a South African perspective first, and if you then can expand that to a Southern African perspective, I would be very grateful. Hank?
Thanks, Godfrey, and to be in such an auspicious group of speakers. Godfrey, what you've begun with in your introduction is actually the core, I think. Is what is available. I've listened to a group of German researchers that was here a year or so ago from the OECD, and virtually every mineral and commodity that's needed for the new green economy that we all hope we will enter faster than it's happening at the moment is in Africa. The second big issue is the certainty of business rules and regulations and laws in Africa is a big issue, and it's strange to say, but South Africa is actually at the moment not very high on the Fraser Institute's evaluation of perception index of certainty in our laws and regulations. And it is important for every phase of mining. It's important for when you do exploration, it's important for when you construct a mine, because you need infrastructure, you need electricity, you often need rail capacity and harbor capacity. It's important for while you're mining. You talked about royalties and taxes. It is very important to understand that the first 2 phases of mining development is actually loss-making. It's only from when we start mining that it becomes really an asset for the countries. And what is quite important is to make available as freely as possible, as Angola is doing, what is available in terms of reserves and resources as freely as possible and as open as possible, because mining is truly an international sector. And then, of course, the marketing and the prices, and that is what you also said in your introduction. South African commodities price increases were in the order of 25%. Over this period, over the last 12 months. It, of course, has had a major impact, but to a degree is also hiding the structural constraints that we have in terms of our own infrastructure, logistics, etc. And then, of course, the last phase of mining is the closing down, and there are opportunities, rehabilitation, etc., etc. So in each of those phases, there are opportunities, but there are also a great need for certainty of laws. And maybe just the last statement, Botswana, for example, its laws have been put in place, I think something like 12 or 15 years ago, and has not changed at all. And their mining sector is absolutely booming. So we have examples of the best ways of doing it, and in many other cases, not the most conducive environment in terms of policy and government legislation.
Yeah.
To foster mining and actually unlock the potential that we have.
Absolutely. My next question to you, Hank, was going to be, when you look around the region, Just in terms of momentum and in the tackling of some of the issues that remain within the mining sector, what are you seeing? Are you more hopeful that we're beginning to move into that phase where the governments realize that the environment is everything and the certainty of the regulations, as you have repeatedly mentioned, is absolutely vital for you to be able to attract, some call it patient capital, but the long capital that's required to develop mines?
Godfrey, it's varied, and unfortunately, that's the answer. Some countries, as I just mentioned, are
Let's be frank.
Let's be frank. Yeah, but for me, what a lot of people do not understand is that, and we hear the minerals nationalism concept. There are different names for it, and to a large degree, it's driven by countries' debt to GDP ratio and their struggle to service their debt and to repay their debt. It is quite vital that there's a balance between fostering the economic activity and actually cater for what a country can do. And the big issue for me, other than what we just talked about, is infrastructure. We've been talking about this for decades in Africa. But we don't build the bridges and the railway lines, and we don't make certain. I mean, in Southern Africa, one of our biggest problems is actually with electricity and energy, and we just don't have enough. So, in many cases, the companies have to generate their own electricity, and the growth means more investment first in the energy and then in the mine, which is a huge opportunity cost for us. So, if we could sort some of those out, the potential is there. It's quite clear that there's potential. It's a case of unlocking it.
Yeah, 100%. Olu, I made you listen to all of that because, as the minister said in his address, the time for Nigeria is now. And I also heard the minister talk about the results of a study that was done that are coming up, I think he said, in the next week. So I'm going to give you two opportunities here. One, to pitch Nigeria and what the minister was talking about. And secondly, your observation in terms of the lessons that Nigeria has learned over the years with, of course, a very long history within the oil and gas sector.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Godfrey. It's a pleasure to be here. Well, as the minister had said yesterday, he spoke about the National Integrated Mineral Exploration Program. Basically, what has happened is the government has taken a concise effort to try and de-risk the mining sector. So the government has gone ahead and has committed $50 million into the first phase, whereby we have gone into exploration, brought in competent persons, and tried to explore and have an idea about the reasonable reserves we have on those minerals. We've looked at barite, we've looked at iron ore, we've looked at gold, we've looked at nickel, we've looked at chromium, and we found out that in all these places, we have found that there are certain levels of these minerals available. As we had said earlier, we found out that in most of the states in Nigeria, there's one mineral or the other. We found out we have certain levels of gold. We found out we've had certain levels of nickel and chromium. So Nigeria is concentrating on developing that sphere at the moment. We've gone into a lot of exploration. We have MOUs with certain companies in furthering our exploration. In the next couple of weeks, we'll have results from this, and we will be we'll be putting out a program whereby we'll publish the results, and we'll also go into an auction for these minerals. In terms of legislation, we're in the middle of even reviewing the Nigerian Mining Act of 2007, where we're reviewing certain parts of the act. In terms of incentives, we're looking at duties, tax holidays, importation of goods by the different mining companies and reductions. And so we're basically saying that Nigeria is open for business in the mining sector. We've also looking at ensuring that we don't go through some of the issues we had during our oil and gas days. We're doing things like working closer with the communities in making sure we have proper community development, also using this as a way of developing those communities and part of their infrastructure. In terms of, I heard Hank speaking about infrastructure. Nigeria is actually doing a lot on reconstructing the railways. We are extending our railways from Lagos all the way down to Kano, and in other ways. We're also looking at using the riverway. At the moment, we have a company that is navigating through the Niger Delta up north, whereby we'll be transporting minerals from the north down to the south. There are quite a lot of activities going on in Nigeria in the mining sector. We also have the presidential artisanal gold mining initiative, where the government has put in funds to be able to cluster a lot of the artisans in terms of taking their gold, refining it, and also being able to produce it at the gold standard. We're also looking at critically at our downstream policy, where the minister is looking at publishing a new policy in the downstream sector. It's presently being looked at in the Federal Executive Council. We want to spend more time adding value to our mineral ores. So instead of us exporting raw ore, we'll be exporting ingots and finished products. At the moment, during this COVID time, a lot of things had slowed down. The government has also put in a new initiative, an economic sustainability program, whereby we're placing 6 major programs in 6 geopolitical zones. We're creating 2 markets. One, a gemstone market in the southwest. We'll be having a gold souk in the north. We're also looking at 3 artisanal clusters, one in Kogi State for gold, another for lead in the east, and also in the south-south, we'll be looking at barite. So in these places, we will be enabling the artisans and enabling the small-scale mining companies. We will enable them by giving them equipment, excavators, drillers, and the rest, whereby on their winnings, we'll now process in the different centers. So as you can see, Nigeria is open for business, and we intend to do as much as we can to de-risk the mining sector, to work with financial institutions to enable there be funding in this sector.
Absolutely. Clearly, a lot of work is underway there. There's no question about it. While we have you, perhaps we might as well ask if there are any special incentives that the government is undertaking to try to get the capital that's required to try to develop all those things that you are talking about.
Well, one of the incentives is, like I said earlier, is a tax holiday. We have a 3-year tax holiday for the mining companies that come in. We also have an incentive where all duty-free for all machinery brought in specifically for mining. This we've already put in place. This is already happening. We have our special cases, Thor Exploration, the Canadian company, actually working in the southwest of Nigeria. And we're hoping they will start production by the beginning of 2nd quarter of this year. Like everybody knows, the pandemic has actually slowed a lot of activities down, but we're just trying to ramp up. We're just trying to ramp up all the activities.
Yeah. Hank, feel free to come in and respond to any of the issues that have been raised by Olu there. But I wanted to talk to one of the issues that he raised, which is the issue of around involving communities in the exploitation of the resources that are in their areas. We know this is a big issue going forward. Increasingly within markets, we are talking about ESG, environmental, social and governance issues, and ensuring that the resources that we exploit include the beneficiation of the communities where they are coming from. Let's share lessons here in terms of perhaps how an outside investor could approach that issue, taking lessons obviously from here in South Africa and Southern Africa as well as Nigeria.
If I may, I think one of the biggest issues around, in South Africa, most of our evolving mining activities are actually in deep rural areas. So we are in poverty-stricken areas where a lot of the infrastructure of the mining companies are made available, and of course the communities and the labor that works there through the labor. The problem around beneficiation is what we call it, but in other words, downstream improvement of what you sell, Firstly, to a large degree, it's determined by whether you have electricity. If you don't have that, and if you don't have enough of it, it's actually very difficult to get a manufacturer to set up in your country. And secondly, what is quite crucial to understand is your market within your country, and very seldom in any one of the African countries, is big enough to actually take off the production that's coming from whatever particular mineral that you beneficiate. South Africa's one example is iron ore. We have very small reserves in terms of the world, but we use 5 or 6% of what we produce of this small reserve. And the metals company, the steel company, is actually struggling because the South African market is so small. So it is very, very important from the start to determine whether you do it economically efficiently.
Yeah.
You have to be competitive internationally. If your market is too small, and most instances it is too small. So there are basic points of departure that you have to take into account. It doesn't work to put tariffs up and think that you will develop a sector within your economy that can actually thrive and expand beyond the limited markets that we have. And that, I think, is something that is often lost when governments go on to this path.
Yeah. Olu, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Hank. But I think one of the advantages we have in Nigeria at the moment is we actually have a very big demand in a lot of these things, especially on the offtake of the final products. So yes, our guys have done a lot of research on it, and I think we will have to try and create a balance in what goes out and what is used within Nigeria. But I think what we're targeting at the moment, at least, is let us even fulfill the domestic demand in a couple of these things. But we're not going to just go immediately. I believe we will grow gradually. We will take our time. We will build the market. The demand is there, so it's for us to be able to get products, to be able to beneficiate products at the quality in which it's needed here in Nigeria. But at the same time, yes, we will be exporting. We're just trying to say, look, let's add value to this. Let's add value to our economy, and let's try and increase our GDP and the mining sector's contribution to the GDP of the country.
Absolutely. A lot of issues to consider without question. And this conversation, of course, has to be held in the context of what we try to do at the continental level, which is to increase the amount of goods that we produce on the continent and sell to each other as part of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Gentlemen, thank you for your thoughts and your insight. I'm hoping that we've been able to convince someone sitting in India to think, I'm going to be heading to Nigeria, or I'm going to be heading to Zambia, or whichever part of Africa they do decide. Thanks very much indeed.